everyone, welcome to the that's the recording announcement. So just so you all know that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube sort of after the session so that other people can see. And if you just to reiterate, if you'd like to put your camera on, we'd love to see you guys. And if you could keep your microphone on mute until we get to the Q&A portion, that would be lovely. Now that we've got all of that out of the way, my name's Ozair. I'm part of the youth panel here at Action for Stammering Children. Before I get into the panelists, just a bit about me is that I'm currently studying economics. I'm in my second year of my undergraduate studies, and I've been part of the youth panel since 2020. And I received speech therapy at the Michael Palin Center, which is sort of how I got into the youth panel and getting involved in the first place. Now on to our very, very exciting speakers who are going to be telling you about the Action for Stammering Children Stammer Awareness Toolkit, which is such an exciting initiative that they will sort of expand on more. So firstly, we've got our incredible CEO, Ria Bernard. She took over as Chief Executive of Action for Stammering Children in June of 2020. She's a qualified speech and language therapist, and she's got clinical and research background. She's really got it all, where she was awarded her PhD in psychology by UCR in 2023. And her doctoral research sort of focused on the links between mental health effects and stammering in young children. So she's really an expert at what she does. We've also got Natalie Carver, who's on the board of trustees, and she as well is really, really amazing at what she does. She owns one of the UK's largest fundraising agencies. She works with charities across the country, and she has a sort of personal story where her involvement with Action for Stammering Children began through her son, who she'll sort of expand about and sort of talk more about that and her relationship with Action for Stammering Children in her opening remarks. After the opening remarks, we'll sort of move to Ria, who will sort of give you an overview and introduction of the toolkit, and then we'll move on to Q&A and the sort of closing remarks, and we aim to be finished around 1:30. So Natalie, could I hand it over to you to sort of start us off?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Natalie Carver. I'm here with two hats on, really. I'm a mum with a child that stammers. He's in year 8 now. Started stammering when he was in around sort of 5 or 6. But I'm also a trustee of the charity. And so this toolkit's really important to me personally. So as I said, my son started stammering when he was in primary school. We live in the Cotswolds. We're very remote. Our local school, it has 100 children in it, maybe 15 in his year group. And so he was the only one who stammered. He had never heard anybody else who spoke like him. There was nobody else in the school that stammered. There's nobody in our family that stammers. So we as a family were very much sort of in the dark with regards to how to approach it. And the school was too. His teacher was a relatively young teacher. She had never taught anybody with a stammer. And she took the time to work out strategies. She was really, really proactive. I think we owe a lot to the school in terms of where he is now. And took a lot of time to do her own research, spoke to us as a family, spoke to my son with regards to how to deal with him in class, how best to approach it, involved the rest of the class and the school at various times. And the support that was given to him means he's gone into senior school really being confident. He's quite extrovert. He's kept that side of his personality. Don't get me wrong, he's a teenager. He has all the normal struggles, but they're not around his speech, even though he still stammers quite considerably. We didn't have anything like a toolkit either as a parent, but more importantly for the teachers. And as a small rural school, that we were lucky, and I feel like it was winning the lottery. It was a bit of a postcode lottery that they had the space and the time to actually find a strategy that worked, and we benefiting from that so much. I got then involved with the charity. My son has said he didn't know anybody who spoke like him, and started to go onto TikTok. He called himself the Stammer Kid, and reaching out to try and find other children that spoke like him. And as a result, we became connected to the charity, and we've done a lot with Action for Stammering Children. And one of the things that the charity is really passionate about is actually being able to reach children all over the UK, and that's really important. And actually, this toolkit for teachers is going to be really significant, because you don't have to do all the legwork that our teacher had to do. It gives really, really practical ways to support children. As a parent as well, like, it would be such a relief not to have that lottery, that actually all teachers have that resource available to them to support the children, whether they're in a small rural school with very little resource, or whether they're in a much, much bigger school. And actually for the children to have strategies that can be implemented, it sets them up so strongly going forward. As I said, we've really seen the benefits of it with my son, and the school has without doubt been massively influential in his progress and how he deals with his speech. So to be able to roll something out to schools across the country and give all the teachers that same ability, I think is going to be a fantastic resource, which as a charity we're really, really proud of, and hope that the teachers really find it useful. So yeah, that's a little bit about sort of my journey here and why I'm so involved and passionate about it. And Ria can talk through the specifics of how it is all going to work and work for you all.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you for sharing all of that. That was really, really helpful and really insightful. So thank you for that opening session. I think now it's time to sort of move on to Ria, who can give a bit of an introduction of the Stammer Awareness Toolkit and give you an overview of the specific modules that are sort of involved with the toolkit. So over to you, Ria.
Thank you very much, Oza, and thank you for the introduction to this really exciting session. And thank you, Natalie, for making the time to, with your various hats on. You talked about two of several hats there. But we are absolutely delighted to have got to this point where we are launching our Stammer Awareness Toolkit. And so for my section, I'm afraid you might have to listen to me for a little bit longer, but hopefully it will be insightful, and you can find out a little bit more about what the toolkit aims to do to support children and young people who stammer and their families, and the schools who work with these pupils. So I'm going to share my screen and run through some slides with you. Please do kind of savor up your questions. We will have an interactive Q&A at the end, where there should be plenty of time to answer anything that you want to pick me up on from my slides. So here we go. This is always the bit where it goes wrong. Can you see my slides okay? Yes, excellent. Super. I can see Oz nodding. I think we're good. Excellent. Lovely. Thank you. So in terms of the next sort of 20 to 25 minutes, I just want to have a bit of a chat about how we got to this point about the Stammer Awareness Toolkit, and also to talk a little bit about us as a charity for those of you who don't know very much about us. So I'm going to just start with just briefly giving you the overview of who we are. So Action for Stammering Children, we are the UK charity for children and young people who stammer, their families and the communities who support them. And I think for this presentation, it's important to really highlight that last bit, the communities who support them, because and I will come to this a bit later, stammering doesn't occur in a vacuum. And it is really important that we all understand stammering and how best we can work with children and families to make sure they realise their potential. And so as a charity, some of the communities I'm talking about are teachers, as well as speech and language therapists and other health and education professionals as well. So our activity is focused around three core areas. We provide information, community and support. So some of those are tangible projects which complement speech and language therapy services provided by the NHS. We do not step in there. We provide access to courses that allow children to meet other children who stammer, but also to develop their self-esteem, confidence and resilience. And in that kind of package of activity, we have our second UK-wide project, which is the Stammering Support Hub. And we ran a webinar on that last month. So please have a look on our YouTube channel if you missed it and want to find out more about the Support Hub. The second area that we work on is championing research. So this is very much thinking about how we facilitate and promote more robust research into childhood stammering, with the intention that that will help us to do two things. One, optimize outcomes of current and new therapy approaches, and develop that evidence base around stammering so we can better understand it. But secondly, and quite crucially, to inform our policy offer and ensure that public policy is meeting the needs of children who stammer and their families. And lastly, I've touched on it already, but we aim to change societal attitudes, and the toolkit very much sits in this area of activity, because we recognise that increasing awareness and understanding about stammering can lead to acceptance and improve societal attitudes. So, in terms of the next slide, which has got stuck. There we go. So I'm going to start talking now about the toolkit and where it came from and why we decided to go ahead with this rather mammoth project, actually, for a charity that is UK wide, but nevertheless is relatively small in terms of capacity. So the context here is not going to be new to you. Children spend the majority of their day in school. And we know that school can be a really challenging place for many children who stammer. Not all children who stammer, because every child is individual and different, and their context is different. But actually, for many children, school can be quite a challenging place. We know that many children who stammer face bullying and teasing related to their stammer. We know that there can be a limited awareness about stammering in the school context and in the society generally, which can lead to kind of some myths and misunderstandings about stammering. And as I touched on earlier, we really do acknowledge and recognise as a charity that awareness leads to greater understanding and acceptance. And that's what this toolkit is really all about. So why did we create the toolkit? It might come as a surprise to some of you, but it might not to others, that stammering affects around 8% of children. That's a pretty large number. By adulthood, you might be looking at about 1%, but 8% is a large number of children. There is an impact of stammering on children socially and emotionally in terms of their well-being. So what I mean here is we know that lots of children who stammer can become quite withdrawn, can become quite socially isolated. They can experience elevated anxiety, low self-esteem, and it can have a real impact on them and their development, and hence the need to make sure that we're kind of creating that supportive, inclusive environment early on to offset some of that adverse impact. Over the longer term, we know that unfortunately stammering has been associated with some adverse mental health. So adults who stammer can often experience increased anxiety, social anxiety disorder, but also stammering can have an impact economically and in terms of employment. And when we think about adolescence, we're thinking about what does that child want to be when they grow up? What is the life they want to lead? And often we find that young people limit their aspirations. They don't realise their potential because they feel they can't, because they stammer, that they wouldn't be accepted or they wouldn't be capable, and we know that's not true. So that impact can be quite long term, and there's a need for us to work together with young children to offset that. Stammering is often misunderstood, and those around the child are sometimes unsure about how best to support them, and that's not their fault. I think that's a broader issue for all of us in the stammering community to work on raising awareness about stammering and the impact it can have. And I think that really what underpins the motivation for the toolkit is recognizing the need to improve awareness among all those working with the child. So instead of focusing the onus on parents and carers, or focusing on the speech and language therapist, or focusing on the child themselves. Actually, if we work as a community around the child, which is actually how it works. If we think about the school community and our neighborhood, our family community, there is a need to improve awareness with everybody. And finally, the toolkit seeks to empower teachers. So it's about providing that information and those tools to create that inclusive classroom environment. We know that that's what you do every day, but there might be some things that we can add to your to what you're already doing to make your classrooms even more inclusive to these pupils in particular. So here I just want to talk a little bit about how did we go about developing the toolkit, because you might have questions about this charity who's taken on this ambitious new project and thought, well, how do you know that what you're offering is what's needed? So I'd start by saying that the Stammer Awareness Toolkit has been developed in response to our experiences, to the feedback, to the way that we have worked with families for over 30 years. And so a lot of what's in there is a culmination of that experience and of listening and responding to families. And we very much approach this with a consultation mindset. So right from the outset, when we were scoping out how we wanted to put this together, we really focused on what the needs and I guess ambitions of those who we seek to support with it want. So that being children and young people, parents and carers, teachers, and speech and language therapists. So we held quite a lot of consultation and focus group activity and work with our youth panel, of which Ozair is a member, to really think about what would children and young people like their teacher to know about stammering? What would parents like the school to know about it? What would children like their teachers and their TAs to do to support them? What would teachers like to know about stammering? What actually would be helpful to them? And in what way should that information be delivered? And for speech and language therapists, thinking about, how can we help in terms of helping to get those children who want it access to speech and language therapy, and thinking about kind of broader generalization of strategies that come from speech and language therapy experts to put them in the classroom. So finally, what is it? What is the toolkit? I'm sure you're wondering, and there's a little bit on our website, but just as an overview and a sneak preview, it is an online learning portal. It is an opportunity to work through 4 interactive modules at your own pace. It's packed full of information about stammering and the impact it can have based on the latest research, but it's also full of practical strategies and resources that you can take from the toolkit and use in your everyday teaching. There is also a component to the toolkit which is particularly interactive that creates a community. We've called this the community of practice area. And this community of practice area was something that actually came out of the consultation process, and recognizing that as well as providing all that information, all those resources and those tools, it would be helpful perhaps to provide a space for educators to talk to each other, to share examples of best practice of things that have worked really well in their own schools. I'm sure Natalie won't mind me sharing some, and hopefully she'll expand on this in the Q&A, but Elliot did some fantastic work talking to his school to raise awareness. And I know that then grew to talk to other schools and teachers talking about that with colleagues within and outside their school. So the community of practice area is a kind of a hub for teachers to share best practice, chat it through case studies, but also to collaborate on campaigns or to work on kind of events where you might want to bring pupils together across clusters of schools. And that element of it, just as a warning, that will go live slightly later than the rest of the toolkit for a purely practical reason that we need educators to have gone through the toolkit and to complete it before you start implementing it and sharing your experiences in the community of practice area. So what are the aims of the toolkit? What were we trying to achieve with this resource? So the first aim is really to develop ours, understanding of stammering and its impact. The more people who understand stammering and the impact it can have, the more inclusive a society we build. And schools are paramount to children's early experiences of society. We wanted to be able to give educators confidence in supporting children who stammer. And we don't mean that in a patronizing way. We mean that in that you have a whole class of children who all have their own individuality and personalities, needs and abilities. And actually giving you a little bit of information and practical support might be helpful in supporting children who stammer in particular. We wanted to equip educators with evidence-based classroom strategies. So as you will work through the toolkit, you will learn that we have provided kind of general classroom strategies that are beneficial to all children and particularly useful to children who stammer. We also aim to provide the information to teachers working with families who might need or want or be looking for support from outside agencies. And that's particularly important because, as Natalie was referring to earlier, it can be really time intensive and also very challenging to find reliable, credible information about how and who to approach if you want that additional support. And so we've put that all together in this resource. And to promote awareness and acceptance of stammering across the school and in the classroom, to make that experience of education a positive one, so that we can finally end the absolute crushing stories that come from adults now in their 50s and 60s of the hellish time they had at school, because actually schools are so much more aware, so much more geared up to diversity and inclusion, and stammering needs to be in the conversation. And that leads me on to my last point, which is to support education professionals in creating that inclusive classroom environment, about thinking about what small adjustments could be made, what conversations could be had to make that classroom experience more inclusive for these pupils. So I'm just going to run through now the aspirations in the longer term. I've talked about the aims, and that's what we're setting out to do by rolling out this toolkit as of International Stammering Awareness Month, as we call it, Action for Stammering Children. But these are our longer term aspirations. This is why and we wanted to roll out the toolkit, and this is what we hope to achieve in the years to come. Hopefully the months, but we know things take time. So what do we want to do? We want every teacher and teaching assistant and any other staff member at your school who works with a pupil who has a stammer to access the toolkit. We want it to be accessible. We want it to be equitable. We want it to be something that is a go-to and that there's no barrier to anybody who wanting to access the resource experiencing problems with that. We want to embed the toolkit into school inclusion and diversity policies. It sits very well within inclusion and diversity, and we give you some ideas of how that can kind of be integrated in there. We want to put stammering on the map when we're thinking about the curriculum. So recently we contributed to the Commission on the Future of Oracy Education, and we had this fantastic roundtable discussion about how we make the Oracy curriculum more inclusive of children with speech differences and speech difficulties. And it was really, really gratifying and important to see stammering reflected in that report. And that's an example of how we think about ensuring that pupils who stammer can take advantage of the opportunities that are there to develop the skills like every other pupil. we would like schools to acknowledge the impact of stammering beyond speech. I think when we talk about stammering, we think a lot about the speech characteristics, but actually it's equally, if not more important, that we all have a conversation and a greater recognition of the impact stammering can have on that child's early social and emotional development, because as we know, that has such significant effects on them for the rest of their lives. We want to empower schools and educators so that they feel confident in supporting pupils who stammer across primary and secondary school. So initially, the toolkit was very much geared at primary schools. It can actually be used in secondary as well. The reason we targeted primary schools is for two reasons. One is you've got younger children who may be beginning to stammer, and that early support's really, really important. But secondly, the idea is that through this work, as a school, those children will develop in their confidence and their resilience to then approach secondary school feeling much more confident and almost becoming stammering ambassadors as they approach secondary, and making that transition, that often tricky transition to secondary school, a little bit smoother. And we want classrooms to be a place in which children who stammer participate as confident communicators. As a charity, it's absolutely imperative to us that we are talking about confident communicators. And what do I mean? I mean children who can convey what they want to say, and the focus is on what they have to say. And there might be slight differences in how they say it, but they are confident in being able to communicate what's in here. And that's really important to us as an aspiration for the toolkit. And finally, I suppose this couldn't be better suited to this project than any other. This is actually part of our whole mission. It is our mission. We want every child who stammers to have the support, respect, and confidence to live the life they want to lead. And that is the aspiration of this toolkit, by working with you as educators to help us achieve that. So I've got about 5 minutes left, I think, looking at Oza, and I have been asked to give you a short preview of what we will cover in the toolkit, or what I should say you will cover in the toolkit when you get access to it. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail because then there would be no point giving you access to it. But I will cover some of the key points that you can expect to learn about by accessing this resource, which I hope is helpful ahead of next week. So our first module is very focused on what is stammering. So thinking particularly about, I guess, starting right at the beginning, about what do we mean when we're talking about developmental childhood stammering or childhood stammering, and the key characteristics. So I talked a little bit earlier about the speech characteristics, but also thinking about the broader impact and the individuality of stammering, both in terms of between different children, every child's experience of stammering and the impact that it has on them is individual, but also I guess thinking a little bit about within the child, so changes in stammering over time, and being kind of, I guess, sensitive around that when working with pupils in the classroom. We will cover factors associated with stammering, so thinking about sharing the latest research about what we know about the cause of stammering, factors that might be involved in how the experience of stammering for children. So some children will stop stammering before when they reach adulthood, and some children won't. And so we talk a little bit about the latest research involved in that potentially. And finally, the impact of stammering. So I've talked quite a lot, I think, about the emotional and social impacts, and I did that on purpose because it's incredibly important. But this module will also think about how that emotional and social impact affects the thoughts and behaviours of pupils, which I think is particularly pertinent for educators. So module 2 is a bit more practical. So we're thinking about classroom strategies in this module. It focuses very much in on the school environment, so taking that information that you've learned in module 1 and applying it to the school context. So in this module, there will be insights from young people who stammer, real life scenarios to give you a flavour of what that experience has been like for children who are still in school, as well as the young adults, some of whom are on our youth panel. You will have practical strategies that can be implemented for the benefit of your whole class. But also we'll run through some factors to consider, as well as some ideas for promoting participation. So a very kind of practical module 2. Module 3 is about working together. So we talked a little bit at the beginning about the need to work as a community around a child. And I think we talk about that in lots of different contexts, and it's no different in stammering. So this module is very much about practical information and guidance, and thinking about working as a school. So together with your colleagues, and how that can be facilitated and supported by us, but also thinking about signposting to outside agencies and organisations that can help. So we know that often families will go to you as the class teacher or as the head teacher, or as the class TA, and say, you know, what can I do? I'm really worried. And so we just give you some practical information about what you can do and who you can approach if that is something that families are seeking. And that module also is where the community of practice comes in that I spoke about earlier. And finally, module 4, promoting awareness and acceptance. So this module really is geared at providing you with the tools, resources, and ideas to get you on that journey towards becoming a Stammer aware school. And I really hope that you're going to take it forward. It's why it's the 4th module and the final module. So this really is about taking all that you've learnt and integrating it into your wider school approach to inclusion. We cover things like promoting peer acceptance, so thinking about how peers can support and work as part of that community around the child. Representation of stammering in school structures, so thinking a little bit about, yes, we can talk about stammering overtly, but it's also very impactful for people to see stammering in everyday kind of school activities and structures. We have some stuff in there around aspirations for the future, so supporting particularly secondary age children, or well, adolescents, I should say, who are starting to approach young adulthood, and that tricky transition there. And then kind of thinking about whole school training and awareness, and how you can sort of think about working with your senior leadership teams to integrate stammering awareness. And this module really is very geared towards the longer term ambitions of the toolkit, where we will be providing opportunities for schools to apply for kind of accreditation, so that you are not just internally stammer aware, you are externally able to say to families and reassure them that you have the knowledge to support pupils who might be starting school with a stammer. So this is my final slide, Azair, I promise. Now, what's next? In terms of what's next, if you haven't already, register your interest in accessing the toolkit on our website. I know that Hila is going to put the link in the chat for you in case you haven't already. There is no limit on the number of teachers or TAs or other staff members, I should add, per school. So if you would like a member of your senior leadership team to do it, and you also have a class teacher who has a child who stammers who would like to do it, you can all sign up as individual users. That's absolutely fine. And the more the merrier, in fact. But we would encourage you all to have your own registration, because then you can keep returning to the toolkit and it will all be under your own account rather than trying to share user accounts. The first year subscription is fully funded. I'm sure that is music to your ears. We're under very tight budget constraints. We are aware. But thanks to the generosity of our donors, we are in a position to be able to offer the first year subscription to schools at no cost. Something that we are particularly proud of and particularly grateful to our supporters for. Access is granted for 1 year, so as in 1 calendar year from the time of registration. And over the course of that year, you will be able to work through those modules at your own pace, but also return to them, download resources, etc. And the last thing I'd say is, this isn't a case that we're just going to give you the access and then say, right, see you in 12 months' time. You will get ongoing support as individual teachers and schools throughout the year from us at Action for Stammering Children. So we'll be proactively getting in touch with you to get feedback on how you're finding things that we could improve upon, reflections on the content and etc. But also, I suppose, thinking about anything that comes up at your school, and if you've got questions or particular cases that you'd like to talk to us about, then you can always come to us as well. So you join the Action for Stammering Children community, is how I would put it. So my last comment here is just to say we will be in touch next week with instructions for accessing the Stammer Awareness Toolkit. So please do make sure you register. Once you register, then you'll be put on the track to get access, but otherwise it won't be an open portal on our website. So that is the way to get access to this resource. And I will leave it there. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Ria. That was so incredible. I don't know about everyone else, but I was just getting really excited hearing about all the things that are going to be on offer with the toolkit. And I know that me as a 7-year-old would have absolutely loved having this toolkit. Me as a 12-year-old, as a 7-year-old, as a 14-year-old, all of those ages, I would have absolutely loved having this toolkit. And I know my teachers would have really benefited as well. So thank you again, Ria, not only for that presentation, but for pouring so much into this toolkit. Now we're going to sort of move on to the Q&A section. In general, if you guys would like to either type your questions into the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand, you can sort of unmute and sort of say your question that way as well, whatever you prefer. We're going to start off because we've already got 2 questions in the chat. So Alison has asked, can I sign up as an SLT on behalf of my local schools? Ria, would you like to take this one?
Of course, yes. Thank you. And I can see that Kirsten, I think, has asked a similar question. So yes, that is possible. We can give access to speech and language therapists, and we appreciate particularly that if you are thinking about recommending it, you would want to see it first. So you can certainly sign up and we can give you access. That's no problem at all. All we would ask is that when sharing with schools, that the schools themselves then sign up as individual users. Otherwise it gets a bit complicated.
Sure, that sounds really good. And would that extend to NHS SLT departments as well? Would that be for all SLT departments? Or...
Absolutely. Yes. Sorry, Oza. You got me because I didn't completely answer Kirsten's question. Yes. All speech and language therapists, independent and NHS can do so.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ria. Do we have any more questions? Oh, perfect. Juliet Butler's got a question about whether it will matter at all when exactly sort of schools sign up and what the cost will be from a year after the registration period. So Ria, I think you're probably best suited to take this one as well.
Thanks, Oza. I'm delighted, Juliet, that you're excited. I think we might be matched on excitement. I'm so delighted about today. So firstly, we know that this can be an issue, and I think it's why we have been concerned about trying to market this, because we know that often there are more than one, there's often more than one child in a school who stammers, but the school might not be aware. In terms of the number of children, it's completely irrelevant to us. You can have as many users from a school as you would like. Now, what we will be doing is asking schools for a little bit of information about the number of children who stammer in their school, if they know. And we hope that this resource will also help in terms of kind of recognising new children who start school who you might think are stammering as well. The cost, what we will be asking for is for schools to run a fundraiser for us, so like a bake sale or something, just to help us with the overheads of continuing to provide the toolkits in the next kind of 5 years. So that's after the first year. So we're not talking about thousands of pounds, don't worry. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ria. I'm also equally excited. I think we're all quite excited about the toolkit. And moving on to Cassie's question about the criteria for accreditation and how long accreditation lasts.
So this is a very good question. So the accreditation would be on an annual basis. And at the moment we have 3 levels. We haven't released the details of that yet because we're very keen to embed the toolkit for the first year so that schools don't feel under pressure, that they kind of have to sort of tick a load of boxes. We know that there's lots of training needs, but there would be 3 levels of accreditation, and that you would be able to then share that on your website and with your resources when opening places at the start of term for schools.
Sounds amazing. And Ria, could a nursery sign up? That's Haley's question.
Yes, Haley, absolutely. So we are planning to extend, I should have said this actually at the beginning, like all resources of a similar nature, this is an iterative one. I mean, it will continue to develop and grow and be updated in response to the feedback from the educators using it, but also from the latest research to make sure that we're always on the pulse. That said, we will therefore be extending the early years elements of it, but it's definitely applicable to early years contexts.
Sounds really good. And could students individually sort of sign up for the toolkit to give access to their teachers to help them educate with stammering? And that's Harley's question, Ria.
Harley, excellent question. Which, do you know what? I don't think I've given a huge amount of thought to. But what I would say is that we would encourage students to encourage their teachers to sign up. Just in terms of kind of managing that, it would be easier. So what you can do is you can contact us and say that you'd be really keen, and then we could work with the school directly to get those teachers signed up.
Thanks, Ria. We're going to jump away from the chat just for a second. We will come back to it. But Neil, if you'd like to unmute and ask your question.
Thanks, Rosaire. Hi, Ria. Well done for today. Great content as well. Loving the structure of the kit. My question just revolves around how to best use the kit for ourselves, if there is any such sort of possibility. Yes, I will push it to my daughter's school. We're on half term at the moment, but I'll send the form tutor the link to sign up, and also for my son's school separately. But I suppose 2 more bits. One is my wife is a governor of a local school as well, so that may be useful in that respect. I've just sent her the link to sign up as well. She's actually the chair and of the governors, so I think it's useful from a educator's point of view there. And similarly, in some respect myself, if I get to that level, but you might remember I do talks at the schools once in a while, just to give assemblies, raise awareness, just to talk to pupils, teachers, and sometimes the parents as well that have been in the room. So if you think it's useful for that regard, we do have content and the slides that we use. Last one I did was, I think, earlier this year, but there may be a few more coming up that I'll sign up to in the new year. So if you think that's useful, I would love the opportunity to use some of the content.
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much, Neil. I mean, the wider we can spread this, the better. And governors particularly are really helpful. But if you'd like to share it, please do. It's all the information is on our website and the form, etc. So and anything that you need from us in terms of kind of information or resources, please just get in touch. But we would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Neil. Sophia's asked, will there be opportunities for teachers of children who stammer to connect with each other and share their tips and experiences? And will there be sort of other opportunities for schools to get further involved with Action for Stammering Children, for example, through fundraising or through in-person assembly presentations?
Would you like me to take that one, Oza?
For sure, yeah.
Okay. And then perhaps I could also pass on to Natalie to chat a little bit about how Elliot has done this as well. Is that okay, Natalie? I'm just like putting you on the spot. So Sophia, in answer to your question, there will be tons of opportunities. I mean, firstly, by getting involved in the toolkit, outside of the huge benefits for the pupils in your class and your school more generally, you become part of our community at Action for Stammering Children. And there are two reasons that that's really important. One is that I think we're a pretty cool charity, and I think that we have a fantastic community, but I think also it opens up an opportunity to get involved in the broader stammering community. So as children become adolescents become young adults, they can get involved in Stammer, for example. There are lots of other organizations out there who do some great work in our community. So it's a really good first step, I think, to get involved in the broader stammering community. And then that community of practice element of the toolkit is really a lovely space for getting involved with each other and connecting as educators and sharing ideas and resources. The in-person assembly presentations, absolutely, we are game. We've already actually been chatting to a school about this. We also have some very passionate youth panel members who have already volunteered to go into schools to do presentations off the back of the toolkit should schools request it. So that's definitely part of the whole offer.
Yeah, just to follow up what Ria said, as I mentioned at the beginning, my son was quite, he did quite a lot around raising awareness and presenting to schools and things like that. So with Action for Stammering Children, he was involved in a film called Me and My Stammer, which is on the website and on YouTube. Obviously, check it out. Award-winning film, I hasten to add. So we had a bit of a platform to do that. But actually, what it allowed him to do was talk to the school. Actually, as you was mentioning, Neil, being able to speak to a wider audience is really impactful. It enabled him to talk to the wider school about it, about what it's like to have a stammer, and for the children to ask him, children of all ages, to ask him about it. And as a result of that, he then went and actually spoke at some other schools as well. And it was really interesting to hear what children were asking him. It wasn't questions that I would have thought. It was things like, does it impact him playing sport and things like that? And actually, they've got questions and they wanted to ask, and it gave a platform for them to be educated by a peer, which I think was really powerful. We also had a lot of children from a lot of questions. He had a lot of questions from other children who felt they were a little bit different. So either because they were autistic or they had other kind of other things that were unique to them. And it was there was some parity there, and actually created a little bit of a sense of, gave them also a sense of belonging, that all children are different and unique, and it sort of empowered that. So he absolutely, there was so much value in that side. He also then did a fundraiser, did a cake sale and stuff. Actually, I think it was in the middle of summer, so they did ice lollies, which was also really lovely. But those sort of presentations worked really, really well in terms of spreading awareness and giving confidence and giving peers, as I think actually the other children having understanding reduces that chance of bullying and teasing so much, because they get it, and it then becomes an null point, and the child can sort of continue to grow. So I think it was it's a really, really useful way, and hopefully this toolkit will also give teachers some kind of structure to do that. And the other thing I think, just from my own experience, was that a lot of the support that the teachers were able to give was also because our head of the school was supportive. So it kind of it made sure that the support was right the way through the school. It wasn't just contained to his classroom, and actually the head gave a sort of wider permission and encouraged him to support in school things as well, giving out certificates and that sort of side of things. So involving the wider school, and particularly, you know, the heads and the sort of kind of management of schools, was also really beneficial from our experience.
Thank you so much, Natalie and Ria. Juliet has asked if the toolkit is solely for primary schools. Ria, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's for both primary and secondary schools?
It is, yes.
Perfect. Moving on to the next question, and Ria, please go ahead and answer, if we have any participants have any suggestions for the spreading of awareness of this toolkit so that it might reach as many relevant people as possible. Natalie or Ria, whoever would like to take this question, please jump in.
So in terms of, I mean, definitely, like Neil was saying earlier, you know, your own connections are so important here. So we've done quite a lot of work on kind of spreading awareness with asking kind of our youth panel and our ambassadors about schools they're already connected to, either as pupils themselves or old schools, or, you know, we know that we all have that kind of special relationship with a teacher, or we kind of have a you know, you might have parents who are governors, etc. I think that's one of the really crucial ways that I would ask participants on the call, if you would just help us spread awareness about it, because the more schools that know about it, the more children we can support, and that's our intention as a charity. So that's what I would ask. If you've got if you're a governor, if you're friends with a governor, or you have family members that are governors, if you have kids at school, if you're a teacher yourself, if you're a speech therapist, whatever contact you have with a school, please feel free to share. We have a blog post about this. We have a website page. If you go onto the school section of our website, you can scroll down, see all the stuff that we do for schools, but there's a section on the toolkit, and feel free to share that and the registration page.
Thank you so much, Ria. Tonji has a question that, will there be an extension in the future to target businesses and workplaces?
That's a very good question. So something that we are doing at the moment, slightly separate to this, but it is related, is a part of our transitional programs, which is very much aimed at the kind of 18 to 25 age range, because we work with young people up to the age of 25, is working with our ambassador network. So those of you who might know a bit about us might know about our ambassadors. Our ambassadors are professionals with lived experience of stammering, who share their stories and their journeys through their careers, in order to inspire and provide that, I guess, motivation and empowerment to navigate the ambitions that young people may have and may feel that they're prevented from achieving because of their stammer. So the Stambassador Network, we are working with our Stambassadors to develop some resources to support, I guess, employers, but in the earlier years. So kind of for entering the career ladder. Stammer does some great work on this, and does a lot of other work on employers, but we work on the kind of starting your career element.
Sounds amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Katie, for your message about the support that actually the stammering children is sort of looking to do, and that's a very sweet message. So thank you very much. We're happy to sort of read that. Harley has asked about whether it's exclusively for primary and secondary schools, or whether this toolkit could be applicable and used for further education, such as college and university.
Another excellent question, Harley. So what I would say here is that a lot of the materials are geared to schools, primary and secondary schools, and the structure of primary and secondary schools. There are elements of it that obviously are completely applicable, and we do have some really nice scenarios from our young people, which do relate to college and university. But that would be something that we could probably talk with your college or university about in terms of adapting some of that content to make sure that it's more applicable and useful for college and university.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm just checking whether there's any more questions. We have got a question about what actions researchers can take to sort of promote the toolkit. So looking more on the research side, which you've obviously had quite a bit of experience with, Ria.
Thanks, Oza. This is such a good question, and I think that one of the things that's really important for researchers is having that link with the community, so that research doesn't feel like it's being done in an ivory tower or done to people, or kind of putting people under a microscope. It's about kind of working with individuals who stammer when kind of designing and focusing in your research efforts. So I think what I would say is that if you're doing research that is around kind of adolescents or children who stammer, being able to signpost to this toolkit. We know that lots of families who sign up to take part in research often will ask the researcher, I need support, where can I go? Please feel free to signpost to the toolkit and let them know. It's something that we do as a charity, and we'd encourage researchers to do as well. I'd also encourage you to have a look at our priority setting partnership top 10. And Uzair knew I was going to plug it, but I have to plug it with that question. And the reason being because that's a really nice example of how you can look at those questions and think about how you could work with us in future to extend resources such as the toolkit for school-aged children. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Ria, and thank you everyone for all of your questions. If we have missed a question, we will be getting back to you after the webinar because we're sort of concluding the webinar up now. But thank you so much for all of your questions. It's been a really interesting discussion, and I hope it's been really insightful and useful, and hopefully all of you guys can sort of be using or promoting the toolkit very, very soon. Ria, would you like to sort of close up with any sort of closing remarks or next steps where you'd like to point sort of the people on the call to? That would be lovely.
Thank you very much, Oza, and thank you for sharing this so beautifully. How you kept me to time is quite remarkable. And could I also say a huge thank you to Natalie for sharing her experiences, because I think, and also what Natalie hasn't mentioned is how much her and Elliot have contributed to this resource and shared their own journey and experience to influence it and shape it. So thank you both for that. Thank you to everybody who joined us this afternoon. I hope you've all enjoyed your lunch while listening to us. And if you haven't, please go and grab it. But it's been an absolutely brilliant launch. We're so excited about the weeks to come. In terms of next steps, if you haven't already, register your interest on the website. We will be in touch with everybody who's registered next week with instructions on how to get access to the toolkits. Any questions in the meantime, please just let me know. And last to say, Happy International Stammering Awareness Day for yesterday. This toolkit is our contribution to the stammering community. Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.